So my name's William Price, and I'm a pharmacist at East Lancashire Hospitals. And I applied for the second cohort of the Topol Fellowship through the BAD. And the project that I have been undertaking as part of Topol is a multi-phase project that focuses on improving monitoring of patients in dermatology, but also rheumatology and gastroenterology, monitoring patients that are on high-risk drugs that require ongoing blood tests. And it's a multi-phase project. The first element of it is having tighter control on blood monitoring for the patients and getting more rapid updates and more relevant information for clinicians about abnormalities in blood tests or missed blood tests, and trying to make it a more digital experience, really, moving away from using lots of printed pieces of paper from pathology to using the computer system that we're developing, which will sort through blood tests and will alert people when something is abnormal or something's been missed, rather than having that be a manual process. The second phase is going to be about having an electronic prescribing solution for some of those same drugs that we do have the blood monitoring on. So it'd be in the same piece of software, so you could have all the stuff about whether they're getting blood tests done or not, and also at the same time write your prescriptions for those products. So that would be things like infliximab that we use using dermatology patients that at the moment we do on paper. And then the final phase of the project, which is the most distant one and the most ambitious aspect of it, will be about having electronic transmission of prescriptions to home care companies, which is something that is quite problematic at the moment and not a very popular prescribing avenue for most clinicians because of how paper-based and a bit of a mess it is, really, because there's lots of different companies and they all want you to do the prescriptions in different ways. So I've had a very, very positive experience of the Topol Fellowship this year, and the time that it's given me through the programme has allowed me to focus a lot more on the project than I otherwise would have been able to, and it's allowed me to take part in it in a more direct way, because I could do things like getting involved in beta testing of the software, that it's going to ultimately result in us getting a much better product in a way that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have that time from the support of the programme. Also, all of the workshops that we've done have been really, really helpful, and have put me in a better position to kind of push back when talking with the third-party company that we are developing the software with, when there have been things that have arisen that I might otherwise have backed down on if I hadn't got the information that I've had from being part of the Topol Fellowship, talking in these workshops, talking in BAD work streams, and having discussions with people in other groups, such as the Faculty of Clinical Informatics. So yeah, it's been very beneficial for me.
So my name is Zishan. I'm a dermatology consultant at Barts Health. Only became a consultant at the start of the fellowship, so I was new as a consultant, but also taking on the fellowship at the same time as well in the new trust. My project was very much an idea when I started with it. So there's different phases everyone's in the Topol Fellowship, and you realize that very quickly. And I was very early in that. I had an idea that one of my concerns about moving to a digital health system or digital platforms would be that you might disadvantage patients and actually potentially reduce access to healthcare. And that was just sort of something that bore out of my experience in dermatology whilst I was working through the pandemic, and patients saying, coming with bigger skin cancers that maybe than I would have normally seen, for example. So it brought out the questions that how can we identify who those patients are in an effective way, but also make sure that we are conscious of those patients as we develop our pathways for digitalization, to make sure that people can still access it wherever they are and whoever they are. So I spent the time that I was given with the fellowship was really, really good, because it gave me a chance to really understand the problem and try to get to grips with where is it, where does it start, how do I address the area, and it put me in contact with lots of different people in lots of different parts of academia, to people in primary care, to people in secondary care, to people in Australia, for example. And I've gone all over the world speaking to lots of different people about this, because it's not just a UK problem, but it's actually very much a global issue. And that's been good. And eventually I came back down to sort of trying to focus an idea that I had, which was that there was a questionnaire that a team in Australia had developed about digital health literacy, and tried to use it in some of our own patients in our own trust, with a view to using that as a basis to improving our service, to make it more accessible. And so at the moment, I'm at the tail end of doing some of that data collection, with a view to doing then some analysis. So yeah, that's where I'm at with mine. So what have I found good about the fellowship has been that it has its highs and its lows. I think I found that there's been times where I've felt like things are really moving really fast with my project, and I'm meeting lots of people, and there's lots of ideas on the table, and I'm sometimes feeling a bit overwhelmed. But then equally, I have times where I feel like nothing is happening, and I hit brick walls, and things aren't moving, and people are feeling like they're obstructive, and things don't seem to be moving in the way that I'd hoped them to. And so you do go through these periods where there's ebbs and flows, and they all work, and sometimes it feels like you're not making as much progress. And I think the thing is that everything that we do, we have a 1-year fellowship for, but ultimately this is a marathon. A lot of the work that we're doing, there's a long-term vision for it, there's a long-term aim for it. And so yeah, the one thing I guess I picked up from my year and my experience has been is that, don't expend too much energy with too much enthusiasm right at the beginning, although it's very useful to have that energy, but to try and sort of taper it and manage it, and sort of use it as a consistent way of pushing things through constantly throughout the year, because it does, you get through maybe Will's found this as well. There's times when you are doing really, really well and flying, and everything seems to be moving really, really well, and then there's times when things just don't. But overall, I've enjoyed it. And actually the thing I've really enjoyed is that it's taught me that the key with tech and the key with digital improvement is actually putting the patients first. And actually, that's been the biggest factor and the biggest thing that I've learned from the whole process, actually, that we really need to focus on patients. Because I think traditionally in healthcare, whenever we've done tech solutions, we've gone, here's the tech solution, now everybody use it. And actually, that's the wrong way to look at it. And actually being exposed to this new way of designing services has been really helpful.